The 49ers offense has been really good this season, but there is one area of the field where they just haven't clicked on all cylinders. Why can't this team punch it in the end zone when they get to the red zone? We'll break it down on today's Gold Standard podcast. What is good, everybody? Welcome to another Gold Standard podcast on the Gold Standard and the Fans First Sports Network. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera, flying solo today because Levin is touring the country's national parks on vacation. He's actually up in Seahawks territory, believe it or not. So I will be here with you flying solo. May go a little bit shorter today, we'll see. But nonetheless, I'm here with you on a very specific mission today because what I wanted to do was I wanted to dive into some of the problem areas that we've seen from the 49ers because we're about a quarter of the way through the season. So I feel like we're starting to have enough data to figure out and see trends and tendencies and things like that. And now keep in mind, when I talk about their problems in the red zone, I'm not a film expert, okay? I'll show some film. I'm not really going to break it down. It's more going to be there so you have something pretty to look at and you could see generally more what I'm talking about. These are more general observations that I have made. We'll see how you feel about them. We'll see if they compare with your own observations that you've made while you're watching the games. And here we go. By the way, hello, Tanisha, YouTube channel member, says, good morning, Rob. It's good to hear your content. Appreciate that. Nick Spangler, great to catch you live, Stats. Love what you do. Thank you. It's okay if you're rare to catch us live. I appreciate it. If you want to become a YouTube channel member like Tanisha, it's less than $3 a month to get custom emojis, membership badges, priority comment response. It's a great way to support the channel. Please and thank you. All right. First things first, I saw a great tweet from Nick Wagner, who covers the Niners for ESPN. And this kind of, we all observed the red zone issues starting in week 1 when they kicked 6 field goals, but Nick's tweet kind of really put it in perspective. And he writes, the Niners are tied for 19th in red zone efficiency at 50% and 18th in goal-to-go touchdown efficiency at 71.4%. Here's some other things from Nick Wagner. Penalties. 4 penalties in the red zone, tied for the third most. Run game struggles. They're averaging just 2.5 yards per carry in the red zone. That's 17th in the NFL. And they're averaging 0.68 yards after contact, which is 28th. Which is crazy to say about the 49ers. Third downs, they're just 18.2% on converting third downs in the red zone. That's 30th. And they have 18 plays that have gone for no gain or have lost yards. That's the third most in the NFL. And only one of those 18 plays is a sack, by the way. So it's not Brock Purdy that's struggling in the red zone. It's the other parts of the 49ers offense. So when I saw that, I was like, damn, that is pretty damning for this team, right? They were number 1 in the red zone last year for, full disclosure. Now, we have to address the elephant in the room first and foremost. We know Christian McCaffrey is not there. That is a big part of the reason for sure. He's a cheat code in the red zone, 100%. But it's not all that, right? We've seen this offense be able to move the ball without Christian McCaffrey. So you can't just pin everything on that and say everything will be perfect when Christian McCaffrey comes back. If Christian McCaffrey comes back. So a couple of observations that I have made through these first 4 games. First of all, and this to me is the biggest one, the passing game is just too horizontal when they get down there. It's too much quick, short passes to Deebo Samuel, screen passes to Deebo Samuel, or a quick out to Juwan Jennings. It's just too horizontal. I know there's less space there, but you don't have to be that horizontal. Throw passes into the end zone. You don't have to treat the goal line like a 12th defender. That's really making your life harder for you there. So those are 2 things that I recommended or that I noticed right off the bat. Way too horizontal when they do pass, and they don't throw passes into the end zone enough. And we saw it, right? The first touchdown to Juwan Jennings in the Rams game was a ball thrown into the end zone. It was a nice play action, thrown into the end zone, wide open, scores a touchdown. That's the kind of attacking plays they need, not the throw it short, hope we break a tackle and get into the red zone. That's not working nearly as well. Mr. JKD Rob says, "Hey, Rob, love the content. Thanks for all you do and the team. Big Niners fan from the UK. Cheers. Thank you. I appreciate that. Appreciate all the compliments. J. Cruz 49er, where is the wet blanket? The human wet blanket, Levin Black, is on vacation. So he is not here today. Hopefully he will be able to join us next week, although we will see if he'll be there on the Instant Reaction Show. And you know what? Arjun, YouTube channel member, makes a good point. Drops are a problem as well. That they have had a couple of drops there for sure. But like in the Vikings game, remember they went for it on 4th down and they tried to throw it to Jawan in the quick out and it was tipped by Van Ginkel. I think that part of the reason it's tipped is because the 49ers or defenders know the 49ers are going horizontal and they're going quick with this pass. And so they know to kind of be ready for that. They're on alert for that. So what I'm going to do is I'll throw up some film in the background. Again, I'm not going to break it down play by play here because I'm not smart enough to be able to do that. But if you look at it while I'm talking, you'll see a lot of what I'm talking about. You'll see a lot of either runs that get stuffed right up the middle or a lot of horizontal plays. There's a perfect example of Jordan Mason getting stuffed against the Jets. They had so many red zone plays against the Jets. They have run 52 plays in the red zone this year. And most of them have not been good, as Nick Wagner laid out earlier. When they do run it, as I said, they get stuffed up the middle most of the time, or they run these kind of pitches to the outside that kind of take a long time to develop. And most of them haven't worked. Some of them have, but most of them haven't. And I think that's the running game has really been a cheat code for Kyle Shanahan in the red zone, especially with McCaffrey, because his offense is not that great historically in the red zone, Kyle Shanahan's. And so the running game is kind of his like get out of jail free card. Just hand it off, block it up, and you can score. When that's not working, I think it's just a difficult area. I think his offense naturally works better when there's more space. And when you get down to the red area, it's condensed, right? That the windows are smaller. Everything is condensed. You have less room to play with. The advantage of Kyle's system is that he can stretch defenses out and create big gaps for quarterbacks to throw the football. You don't have to defend as much space when you get to the red zone. So that shrinks everything. And I think it makes it harder for his passing game. So that has definitely been an issue. The horizontal nature of the plays, the fact that there's not as much room down there, and the fact the running game has been getting stuffed pretty much. Especially the interior runs, too. The interior of the Niners offensive line has not been great in this one area, at least so far this season. When they do throw it into the end zone, though, I feel like they've had more success, right? We saw the play action that they did to the fake pitch to Jennings against the Rams. That was a beautiful throw where he was wide open in the end zone. Even the throw to Kittle, right? You've got the two ends of the spectrum there. You've got the one where Kyle's play calling just totally gets Jennings wide open against the Rams. And then you've got the one that we saw last week with Kittle where Brock just chucks it up and lets his superior player go and get the ball. Both of those things can work. One touchdown doesn't count any more than the other. And I think that sometimes Kyle, he doesn't like to draw up that play because it's kind of like hope, right? And just hope and a prayer. But when you've got the superior player, it's not the end of the world. And I think that they should do it more, frankly. Debo, Kittle, Jennings, those guys are going to go up and battle. They're not going to let the ball get intercepted. Got to trust them a little more. Ooh, that one against the Vikings hurts. Ayuk was open on the left side, and Brock was just a tick late getting him the ball, and it falls incomplete. So those are the big areas where I've just noticed that the Niners keep having the same problems over and over again. What I would do to try and switch it up a little bit is, number one, I would let there be more vertical type routes, more passes into the end zone from Brock Purdy. Ooh, that one from Kittle against the Vikings, too. 9 times out of 10, he scores on that. How many times does he get pushed out of bounds in his career like that right at the goal line? But anyway, I would let Brock throw it into the end zone more, give him more options. And what that also allows you to do is it allows Brock to use his improvisation skills, his off-schedule skills. Because if you run those routes and nobody's open, Brock can move around and make a play, like we saw in the Kyle Juszczyk touchdown that got called back. Right? I know it didn't count. That wasn't Brock's fault, but he rolled around. Nothing was open right away, extended the play, waited, and found juice in the end zone. If your system doesn't work quite as well in the red zone, then that's when you have to lean more on your players. You have to lean more on the skills of the guys that you have, and you have a quarterback with the improvisation skills to make it work. And I think that would be one way where Kyle could have more success, and the 49ers could have more success in the red zone, especially if Brock can run a little more in the red zone. If he can run and score a couple touchdowns. That's something he hasn't really done. I think he only has like one non-quarterback sneak rushing touchdown in his career. It's just not really what Brock has done. But if he starts to do that in the red zone a little more too, that'll open things up a lot more. Shenanigan says, then he is not a genius then. Well, I don't know why people get so triggered by the word genius when people call Kyle Shanahan a genius. I really don't. You can be a genius and not be perfect. It doesn't mean you're perfect. It doesn't mean every play call works. It doesn't mean any of that. It means you're really smart. It means you're doing things that people had not seen before and that people are copying. And that is exactly what has happened with Kyle Shanahan. The whole league, I don't want to say the whole league, a huge chunk of the league is from his coaching tree and copying his offense. That's just a fact. Like, you've lost the argument. You've lost the argument. I don't know why it gets people so triggered just because he hasn't won a Super Bowl. That's not how it works. You can be a genius at something and not be a champion. Those are two different labels. So maybe I'm the one that's triggered, I guess. But those are the things that I would do if I was Kyle Shanahan. I hope that he does them. Kyle is at his best when he has data to study and react to. He needs time to get the data. He's very good at coming up with counterattacks. He's very good at coming up with sort of knowing exactly when you're going to start to over pursue something and then boom, hit you with the exact opposite and make a big play for his team. And we're at the point in this season where that's going to become possible because the data has come in. I will point out, however, that Kyle Shanahan does have a losing record in the month of October in his career. He's 13-19, I believe, in the month of October. It's the only month he has a losing record. So it may take a little longer to collect that data, at least historically looking. That's how it's gone. Now, some of that includes 2017 and 2018 when the team was just miserable for both of those years. But it'll be a nice test for Kyle because you've got Arizona, you've got Seattle, 2 division games in 8 days for the Niners, then Kansas City, then Dallas in October. Not an easy October by any stretch of the imagination. Oh, and by the way, Kansas City's coming off a bye. Yay. JC, a.k.a. Jarson, says, glad you went live. Was waiting for something to pass the rest of the day at work. Well, I don't know if I'm going to be able to go live for the whole rest of your workday, JC, but, I'll give it a shot. Arjun says, luckily, Brocktober has to start. Brock is playing at a level right now that he's never played at before, quite frankly. He is killing it. And I got into an argument with Grant yesterday. I argued that nobody's playing the position better than Brock Purdy right now. Doesn't mean he has the most stats. Doesn't mean he has the most touchdown passes. I'm saying nobody's playing the position better than he's playing it right now. Brock is throwing the ball deep down the field. He's hitting these deeper throws with way more accuracy than the rest of the NFL. On 10-plus yard throws, Brock Purdy's completing 66% of his passes. The rest of the league, the average around the league is 46% of the passes. And he's not doing it with all the Avengers in tow. He's doing it where his leading receiver is a 7th-round draft pick and his leading rusher is undrafted. So if he's making more difficult throws, deeper down the field, he's hitting those throws way more than the league average without the stars around him. To me, that's the definition of playing the position better than anybody else, especially when you add in what he's done with his legs, especially when you add in what he's done off schedule. As I said with Grant yesterday, Patrick Mahomes is a better quarterback. No question about that. It's not even debatable. But right now, at this very moment, I think Brock Purdy's playing it better than Patrick Mahomes. The whole discussion came up because I looked at the schedule and I said, geez, let me see, because so much of this 49ers Shanahan regime has been, hey, the Niners have the best team, but they don't have the best quarterback, right? They were still at a quarterback disadvantage in a lot of the games, particularly playoff and Super Bowl games. And what I said was, I'm not so sure if that's the case anymore. And if you look at the 49ers schedule the rest of the way, I think they have the quarterback advantage in most of the matchups. And I'm not trying to be a homer here. I mean, I feel like everybody, God, half the time I'm getting, accused of being too negative. I'm not afraid to criticize the team and the quarterback. But let's just take a quick look at the 49ers schedule here the rest of the way, and you can decide, and you can tell me I'm crazy, right? Arizona. Right now, who's the better quarterback, Brock Purdy or Kyler Murray? It's Brock Purdy. It is. Kyler can be really good, but he can also be really bad, and we saw it this season. He was really good against the Rams, really bad against Washington last week. Geno Smith, right now, I know people are really high on Geno. I take Brock over Geno Smith. I do. Geno doesn't do what Brock does with his legs. I take Brock Purdy over Geno. Well, you talked about Brock Purdy over Mahomes. Again, Mahomes is the better quarterback, to be sure. But right now, I think Brock is playing better. The Cowboys are struggling to move the ball. Brock's playing better than Dak right now, no question. Baker Mayfield, I take Purdy. Geno, we talked about. Jordan Love has only played a couple games this year, but he hasn't really looked good in either game. Particularly early against Minnesota, he looked awful. Now, I know they came back later in the game. Josh Allen, fair enough. Definitely playing better than Brock Purdy right now. Better quarterback and playing better than Brock Purdy. No question. Josh Allen is a mutant. Caleb Williams, forget it. Matthew Stafford, forget it. Miami's a disaster. Jared Goff is coming off a really good statistical night. But to me, when I watched that game, that was like a Jimmy Gimme special from Jared Goff. Most of those throws were play action. Most of those throws were screens and checkdowns. Most, not all, most. And that's not to say Jared Goff played bad. Obviously, he didn't. He didn't play, to me, as good as the numbers say. That's all I'm saying. And then the last game of the year is Arizona again. So tell me if you think I'm being crazy. If you think I'm way off, that's fine. We can talk about it. But I think we're at a spot now where Shanahan doesn't have the worst quarterback in these matchups going forward. Now, that raises the expectations for him, because if you have the better quarterback and you have your play calling, you should win a lot of the time. Heineman says he's the Ringer's 15th ranked quarterback. Yeah, that's not surprising. They've always kind of been consistent with him. They have their stance, for better or worse, whatever you might think of it, but they don't deviate from it. I did see a tweet today that frustrated me, and of course it came from Lobs all day, because that's what Lobs does. Let me throw it up on the screen. Should have had it up sooner. Sorry about that, everybody. Lob said, he quoted Chris Sims, because Chris Sims said that Brock Purdy is considerably better than he was last year. Unlike last year with the Shanahan specials where guys are running open, he's making tough, accurate throws and the ball's getting there faster. That's what Sims says. And then Lobs throws in this, which frustrated me. It was, Chris Sims is changing his tone on Brock Purdy too. And I just think that we are at a really weird place when it comes to evaluations of not just quarterbacks, but all players. We are in a place now where you have to make an opinion on a player immediately. And then even if the guy improves and is way better than ever, you have to stick to that opinion no matter what. Even if the guy is light years better. And it makes no sense to me, frankly. And as I tweeted, when the information changes, you can change your opinion. Brock is on pace to throw for 5,000 yards this year. Oh, 4,800 to be fair. The Avengers haven't been there. Brock has admitted himself that he's worked on his mechanics to tighten them up. Why can't we say, hey, this guy's better now than he was? People act like you're doing something wrong. Like you're almost like an insult, right? It's just a weird thing, and it's mostly done with quarterbacks. It's done with a lot of players, though. Perfect example, Sam Darnold in Minnesota. There is no question this year that Sam Darnold is playing better than he ever has. It's indisputable. But we're not allowed to say that because we also said when Sam Darnold was playing terribly that he was terrible. That doesn't make any sense to me. So it's really weird because you had to anoint Brock Purdy, even though he wasn't playing anything close to the way he's playing now. You had to anoint him when he took over in 2022. And now if you say he's playing well now, somehow you're not a real fan or changing your tune. That doesn't pass the smell test with me in any way. When the information changes, you should update your opinion. That's what anybody should do. And it goes in reverse, too. I was super high on Isaac Guerrero. I was gushing about Isaac Guerrero when he was drafted. I love it. He's so big. He's so fast. The 49ers got a steal. This is great. I was dead wrong on Isaac Guerrero. He stinks. He's not going to be anything in the NFL. I was wrong. My information has changed. I got more information. I look at the information and I adapt accordingly. Isaac Guerrero's not any good. When he's been in a running back, he's not any good. He hasn't been any good as a returner in the regular season against actual NFL competition. He's not. And I hate to say it, but with running backs, you kind of know it pretty quick, right? I can't think of a running back that stunk for a few years and then all of a sudden was good. Like usually that transition is pretty smooth. And he hasn't been able to make it, unfortunately. So I just think that we should be allowed and able to update the information. It's not a criticism. It's a credit. You should get credit for updating your opinion, whether you were right, whether you were wrong. To just say, this is what I believe and nothing that ever happens can change it one way or the other. That's weird to me. That's almost like religious. I don't know. That's a very strange place to live in. Maybe it's just me. I'm trying to check the chat really quick to see how you feel about some of the things that I have said. Heineman says you don't need to defend Sims. I just agree. That's all. And it was a good example of what I'm talking about. I mean, Chris certainly doesn't need me to defend him for any reason. Luke says Brock was also coming off a major injury last year. People never mention that. Isn't it weird that, remember when Brock would be on the sidelines and he'd have that big sleeve on his elbow? And at first we were like, what the hell is that? And what did the 49ers beat writers tell us? Oh, it's okay. It's nothing. He's been doing it all season. It's nothing. Everything's fine. And then what do we find out? Yeah, actually his elbow was not 100% until at least Thanksgiving, and he was still rehabbing. So it turns out the sleeve was kind of a thing. He was there because he needed it, right? He's been better this year. Brock has been better in multiple areas. It's encouraging to see because I think the offense is going to have to carry the load. Perfect example against the Cardinals. Kyler Murray may be good. He may have a good day. He may not. But one thing I know, the Cardinals defense is not going to have a good day because they're not very good. I saw this from Shio Kapadia, who said, just look at the list of the 10 worst single-game defensive performances so far this season based on success rate. The Arizona Cardinals have 3 of the 10 worst single-game defensive performances so far this season. And that's from Shio Kapadia, who's a podcaster and writer for The Ringer and Spotify. So regardless of what happens with Kyler Murray, the Niners offense should be able to move the ball against Arizona. Down the field, left, right, center, and stick it in the end zone. And I think as we go forward and the 49ers play some of those tougher teams I mentioned earlier, specifically ones with good offenses and good quarterbacks, they're going to have to lean on their offense to win them the game. It's not going to be, hey, we'll kick field goals and punt and we'll hold the other team. It's not going to work this year. I don't think they have. The defense is not at the elite level that it has been at in years past. And that's okay. That's part of what is supposed to happen as you have guys make a lot of money, as your quarterback will eventually make a lot of money, and as you get the quarterback, the guy. If you have the guy, you have to lean on him to make those plays because they're eventually going to make that money. And your roster is going to become thinner unless you're perfect at drafting. Because that's the other side of it. People are like, hey, the roster is not going to be as good once you pay Brock Purdy because you're going to miss on draft picks. But if you don't miss on draft picks, you just have a team full of studs. The chances of that, of course, are very, very slim. But, I'm just saying it's possible. And certainly if you look at this 49ers draft class, it's very encouraging. Kyle was talking about it this week, how they love what they've seen out of Renardo Green. They love what they've seen. Well, obviously, Ricky Pearsall's a separate issue. They love what they've seen out of Renardo Green. They love what they've seen out of Malik Mustafa. Dropped interception notwithstanding. Kyle was pretty complimentary of him, to be honest, actually. But this year's draft class looks more like a draft class that's going to replenish the cupboard. For some reason, I'm blanking on the rest of the draft class. Why? I don't know why, but I am, because I'm trying to search for it. Puni. How did I forget Puni? Yeah, clearly plug and play starter Mustafa. I mentioned Cowing. We hope. I don't know. Maybe if he ever gets on the field and can stay healthy. Got to stop fumbling punts though. But certainly Green, Puni, Mustafa, Pearsall. They continuously praise effusively. We don't know about him. Kyle Shanahan said that he's not quite ready to open the practice window, but it's soon. So again, that's encouraging for just in terms of him playing at all this season. That seems like that's pretty much been it's pretty much guaranteed he's going to play this season, which is encouraging because you want to see that. And they keep talking him up at every step of the way. The other thing that I thought was interesting that Kyle said, he was specifically asked, hey, is Pearsall's shoulder part of the reason you haven't opened the practice window for him yet? And Kyle said no. Kyle said his shoulder was fine before he got shot. So I guess the shoulder is not a thing anymore, which is good. And we'll see once they activate the window for Pearsall. They have 3 weeks to let him practice and decide if they want to put him back on the active roster. It seems like that's going to be a foregone conclusion at some point. And the 49ers hopefully will do that, and hopefully we'll get to see him. Kyle was asked with Pearsall, like, hey, because he missed so much time in the preseason and training camp, will he not be able to get on the field? Because that's essentially what Kyle has said is his justification for keeping Jacob Cowing off the field. Kyle didn't really go down that route. He was kind of like, yeah, well, we'll see. So maybe it could be a Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk situation where Deebo can get away with certain things that Ayuk can't, and Deebo still gets to be on the field and part of the offense, and Ayuk doesn't. We'll see about that with Ricky Pearsall. Law of Awe says, we lost Greenlaw and our D couldn't match their D. Mistake for mistake. This ultimately did us in. Are you guys arguing about the Super Bowl in the chat? Don't argue about the Super Bowl. We're past that. We're way past that now. It's a new season. It's a new season. Let's not dive into that. The other Kyler Murray stat that I saw that gave me the warm and fuzzies was the difference in Kyler on scripted part of the game plan versus not scripted. You know, most teams script out their first 15 plays, whatever the number is. Kyler has been very good during that portion of the game. Josh Norris pointed it out. In 4 games this year, on the opening 15 plays, Kyler has 5 touchdowns, 5 scrambles, and only 1 sack. And he's damn near perfect from a completion percentage standpoint. All other dropbacks outside of those opening 15 plays, he's only got 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 9 sacks, and he's 56 of 88. So he is a way different quarterback after those first 15 plays than he is on the opening drive or 2. And so I just want everybody to keep in mind, and one thing I'm going to keep in mind is when the game starts and whenever the Cardinals get the ball, if they get the ball first, if they go down the field and score a touchdown, do not freak out. Do not freak out, because what we've seen through a quarter of the year is that Kyler is a different quarterback after you get past that. So we'll have to see. So I'm not going to panic. We'll see which Kyler Murray shows up. If we get the Rams Kyler Murray, that could be a problem. If we get the Commanders Kyler Murray, then that would be much, much better for the 49ers, obviously. But I saw that and I was like, wow, that is stunning to me. And I don't know if that's a Kyler thing. I don't know if it's a Jonathan Gannon or, you know, a Cardinals game plan thing. Like, I don't know what the issue is. That's really bad. That's really bad. And I thought it was interesting, too, because the Cardinals and Kyler got a lot of love from the 49ers this week. Fred Warner said that Kyler's the best he's been right now, and that he's specifically shouted out Kyler's ability to stay in the pocket and make plays from the pocket. So, like, they are honestly seeing, or at least they're pretending to see, they're talking about this week, a much better Kyler Murray than in the past. I do think that the Cardinals are a well-coached team, more or less. They're not the dumpster fire they were when Cliff Kingsbury was there. But let's be honest, the 49ers should handle their business against them this Sunday. They should. And it's important. And the Niners have talked about how important it is because they play 2 division games in 8 days. You got the Cardinals, and then you got the Seahawks on Thursday. 2 important games in a very short period of time for the 49ers. And that game is in Seattle on Thursday, too. So you got to handle your business, and you've got to handle this right from an injury standpoint as well. Kyle talked about this. There's a bunch of guys that are day to day. A bunch of guys. Warner day to day. Kittle day to day. Yetur Gross-Matos, I believe, was day to day. Like a ton of guys coming out of that game and even in the days after that they have to manage. And it's like, basically, you almost have to decide, like, which game do you want them to sit out, right? Because you got 2 games in 8 days. So if you want to play them against the Cardinals, great, but that means you're probably not going to be able to play them against the Seahawks, right? And if you want to save them and make them rest up, then you're going to miss the Cardinals game to rest them up for the Seattle game. And there's a lot of guys in there. So you're going to have to sort of manage that as you go. Now, the good news is you're way better than the Cardinals, and you should be able to handle them. You shouldn't need all your horses, but you need some. Some of those guys are going to have to play hurt. And then it's like, if you play them, how much do you risk them for beyond that? It's a tricky situation if you're Kyle Shanahan. And I'm interested to see how he plays it. I'm interested to see who practices today. Harris says, I'm worried if Fred doesn't play, it changes the defense tremendously if he doesn't play, especially against the guy that can run around like Kyler, right? Makes a huge difference. But again, that's why I say you have to lean on your offense, because Brock is not one of those guys at day-to-day. Brock is good. Jordan Mason right now, knock on wood, is good. Deebo Samuel is pretty good. George Kittle's a little banged up. Brandon Ayuk is good. The offensive line, as far as we know, good. That's what you're going to have to lean on. So that even if Kyler has some success and he scores, you know what? Like, yeah, you may have to win a shootout or something close to it. And who's bringing more ammunition to the shootout than Brock Purdy, even with some guys banged up? So that's why I say you may have to lean on that. Especially, the 49ers defense is very top heavy. Warner's really good. Bosa's really good. Deommodore Lenoir is really good. But there are some weaker spots in the defense. I feel like there's no weak spots on the offense except for Colton McKivitz, really. That's pretty much it. Out of the 11 guys on offense, there's like maybe one weak spot. Andre says Fred needs to play, but he also needs to play against Seattle. Without Fred, Kenneth Walker torches this defense. Again, that's the dilemma that you're in. And I think if I was Kyle, I would say, you know what? Let's rest Fred. Let's give him another week of rest. We'll take our chances. If we've got to lean on the offense, we'll lean on the offense because we want him back for Seattle. Seattle's the team you're chasing in the division. Seattle is the team that is going to be better than Arizona in the long run. You might be chasing them and competing with them for the division title all year long. So I think that's how I would play it. Plus, like, just giving Fred an extra week to rest now probably gives him the best chance to recover in the season as we go forward, right? Because if you rest him now, he'll essentially have 2 weeks off. It'd be the way to go. If it's not a serious ankle injury, 2 weeks, maybe just enough to sort of get him, back to close to 100%. So I think I would rest him and just say lean on the offense. But yeah, it's going to be tricky for the Niners because here's the thing. You lost to the Vikings already. You lost to the Rams. So you have 2 losses in the NFC already, which is one of the tiebreakers, and you have a loss in the division already. So these next 8 days, you got to handle your business. You can't have all these losses in the NFC and in the division in particular, especially in a year where you may end up tied with somebody and you may have to go to tiebreakers. So it's a big 8 days for the 49ers. It's definitely big. Jason Tillman says the center's not that good. He's been better lately. I'll say that. He's been better lately. I wouldn't call him good, but I think when he's healthy, I think Brendel's a league average center, I would say. He's going to have some plays, some bad plays. He's going to have some good plays. Baziman says McKivitz and Brendel remain our weaknesses. It's always the offensive line. Dylan Austin, I feel we barely ever punt, but we got to convert in the red zone, go to Kittle in the red zone. Well, clearing up the special teams is like job one for sure. That actually absolutely has to happen. But yeah, the red zone scoring will go a long way. That'll be even just improving that a little would help with the offensive output a lot. You turn one or two of those field goals into touchdowns, and all of a sudden these games aren't close. And it's not like they're that far off in the red zone, too. They have the horses. Jan says Kittle, Juwan Jennings, and Conley should be targeted in the red zone. Brock prefers big target on tight coverage. I think Brock is totally comfortable with chucking it up there and letting guys go get it. I do. Like that throw to Kittle was a perfect example against the Patriots. 2, 3 guys there, whatever, throwing it up. Because the other thing, too, is like just because a guy is there doesn't necessarily mean he has a shot to make a play, right? Is he even facing the quarterback? Is he even looking? Does he even know the ball's in the air? JT O'Sullivan likes to say, if the guy's not looking, all he's defending is the area between his shoulder pads, which I kind of like because it makes sense. So maybe you do need to just throw it up there and let guys make a play. Trust your guys. Juwan is 6'3". Kittle's tall. Conley's a bigger guy, certainly bigger than some of the other receivers the 49ers have. So it'll be interesting to see if the 49ers adjust their red zone strategy going forward. I want to see fewer horizontal plays. I want to see more passes into the actual end zone. And you have to improve your ground game in the red zone because it's been bad. JCG 1987, YouTube channel member, thank you very much, says all the Brock haters demand he throw 30 touchdowns and 4,500 yards every season, which, by the way, he did last year. He threw 31 touchdowns, and I believe it was right around 4,500 yards. In 23 seasons, Brady only threw 39 times and 4,508 times. So I agree that there are rising expectations for Brock Purdy. And if he were to sign a contract for the market rate, which is basically $60 million a year, those expectations would shoot up even more, for sure. But like you point out, 30 touchdowns and 4,500 yards is a damn good year. Now, part of the reason Brady didn't do it more, don't forget when Brady came into the league in 2000, it wasn't as pass-friendly as it is now. It was still pass-friendly, and certainly more pass-friendly than it had been to that point. But it's way more pass-friendly now. So I think you're going to start to see those numbers more and more. When I was growing up, this is going to make me look like the old guy in the room. When I was growing up, a 3,000-yard passing season was like a really good year. If you had 3,000 yards passing as a quarterback, that was a damn good year. Now, if you throw for 3,000 yards in a season, people are looking at that offense like, what the hell's wrong with it? Right? Like, we're like, damn, he only threw for 3,000 yards. So it evolves. Even in the 39 years that I've been alive, it's evolved. But yeah, the expectations will go up for Brock, which is funny because if he puts up crazy numbers and they don't win the Super Bowl, people will say, so what? You didn't win the Super Bowl. So it's weird that like we're in that sort of weird position where it's nothing good that you do counts unless you win a Super Bowl. But if you're not doing really good things before you get to the Super Bowl, we're going to criticize you for not doing really good things. And it's like you can't win for losing if you're Brock Purdy. Iceman 0072 says, how can you be a Seattle Mariners fan? The majority of Mariners fans are also Seahawks fans. I can't support anything Seattle except Starbucks and Nirvana. First of all, I'm not a Starbucks guy. So this is just a quick thing for anyone that doesn't know. Yeah, I'm a Mariners fan also because I'm an idiot, frankly. But I grew up in Connecticut, live in Connecticut right now. I didn't want to have to choose between the local teams, so I chose teams far away. 49ers, 3,000 miles away. Mariners, 3,000 miles away. I was also a Seattle Sonics fan. Now I'm an Oklahoma City Thunder fan because I didn't care that they moved because it didn't affect me one bit. So, if you're a kid growing up, and I told this to my son, and I'll tell it to my daughter when she starts to care about sports, you don't have to pick between the local teams. Why should you be restricted to picking the teams that are near you just because of geography, especially now? You can get every team's game whenever you want it. So pick whatever team you want. It doesn't bother me. I know a lot of Mariners fans used to get triggered when I would do a Mariners podcast and they would see all this Niners stuff in the background. Root for whoever you want. I don't care. Root for whoever you want, especially now. Harris says, you picked the right Seattle teams. No, I didn't. I mean, the Mariners are a joke. For all the, and I have criticized Jed York and I'll continue to do it, but he at least tried, right? He tried to hire a good coach after, he hired Jim Harbaugh, one. They fired Jim Harbaugh. That was dumb. They replaced him with Tom Sula. But they fired Tom Sula after 1 year. They could have let him play out his contract or coach out his contract. They didn't do that. They fired Chip Kelly after 1 year. They could have let him coach out his contract. They didn't do that. Then they hired Kyle Shanahan. So Jed York is far from perfect as an owner, but he is far from the worst type of owner. The Mariners have the worst type of owner. Jed York at least attempts things. He may not be good at everything. He may fail at some of the things he attempts, but the Mariners don't even try. They don't care. They don't pretend to care. They won't even tell the fans if their GM has a contract extension or not. So, yeah, don't room for the Seattle Mariners, basically. I don't know how we got off on a Mariners tangent, but nonetheless. Anyway, that's going to do it for this edition of the show. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to talk with Johnny Venerable, who covers the Arizona Cardinals. I'm going to talk with him tonight. So that'll be up on the channel tomorrow because I like to do the crossover podcast, as early in the week as I can. So that'll go up. I like to take a deep dive on the opponent, someone that knows them a lot better than I do. I'll ask them about the Kyler stat and more. We will see. And by the way, just Andre says Rob loves Lou Piniella. I did when he was there. Just to answer somebody in the chat, because I saw it earlier, Devontae Adams thing is not happening. If Brandon Ayuk was on the 5th-year option, I would say, oh, hell yeah, that might be a thing that was real. Now that Ayuk is under contract, I just don't see it. There's a lot of, machinations that would have to happen cap-wise, and it's like, how much better are you really getting if you're the 49ers? Like, why are you going to twist yourself into a pretzel to make this move happen, to make yourself 3% better? So I don't see it happening, but people do ask a lot, so I thought I should mention that. But anyway, thanks everybody. I appreciate it. Please rate, review, and follow the Gold Standard Podcast wherever you get your audio podcasts. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. Click the bell so you get notified every time we're live, which is every single weekday. And after every single 49ers game, we'll be live, of course, on Sunday after the game. Right when the game ends, we hop in for the instant reaction show. It's our best show of the week. There's a lot of emotions flowing during that show, not going to lie, but that's what makes it fun. So please, I hope you join us for that. If you're new, give us a shot. I promise you, we won't let you down. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday, everybody. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera. We'll talk tomorrow.